Hey you, I'm Manisa Benitez. Welcome to Create to Liberate. In today's episode, we'll be covering embracing your feminine energy. Why it is so important to cultivate our feminine energy in the society that doesn't actually highlight what feminine energy is, demonizes it oftentimes as something that's unnecessary, doesn't make a lot of money, etc., but ultimately leads to a more fulfilling life. And more of us are seeking that more than ever, more joy, more happiness, more inner intuitive guidance, more expansion, expression, etc. So I'll integrate my own personal lived experience as I believe we are all each other's mirrors. We provide a mirror to each other to be able to see ourselves more clearly. And so if this video resonates with you, amazing. Take what you need and leave the rest. As always, if you are listening on audio, your review is welcome. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the like button and subscribe for future uploads. So for today's episode, first we'll get into what is feminine energy, the power of feminine energy. I always love to emphasize empowerment because when we think of feminine energy, it's this softness, this receptivity, and it seems like passivity. It seems like something that's not going to yield income, yield external power, and it does, but it begins within. It's an inside job first. Then we'll get into practical steps to cultivate your feminine energy, the benefits of cultivating that feminine energy, and ultimately living a more fulfilling life. So first, what is feminine energy? So regardless of your gender, we all have feminine and masculine energy. It's not a gendered thing. It's also called yin and yang energy. If you're familiar with the yin yang, there are so many ways that this polarity exists within us, and we are introduced into a world that maybe favors one of these energies more so than the other. Feminine energy is nurturing, it is caring, it is deeply intuitive, it's expressive, it is creative. So when I first started this podcast, it was called No Starving Artist. And No Starving Artist was focused on my creative journey, really embracing my feminine energy after working in a male dominated workspace at Google and formerly Time Inc. and Sony Music Entertainment, just in corporate environments as a marketer. That heightened within me my masculine energy. Was completely around doing achievement, making money, etc. And many of us, no matter what part of the world we grow up in, a lot of this doing energy is emphasized, and less so the being energy becomes seen as valuable. So usually around your adolescence, you can see that there's a trajectory for you to enter the workplace, therefore emphasis on what can you provide society, how can you be valuable in a way that supports your government, etc. So being this receptive, intuitive, nurturing, caring person seems less valuable. But ultimately, to have a really deeply fulfilling life, it's really important to be balanced in our energies. And most sadly, by demonizing or disregarding the value of feminine energy, people have continued to chase dollar bills, external power and fame, external praise, all these markers of success. And on the other side of it, feel the emptiness because all of these things that exist in the external world really, there was some part of us that believed it would be lasting fulfillment on the other side of it. Yet that fulfillment will ultimately most deeply come from within, will come from us, will come from who you are, from being the human being that you are made to be in this earth. So now getting into the power of feminine energy, thankfully, it's not over for you. If you're tuning into this, then it's definitely the beginning or maybe the midpoint, maybe the end of an inflection point for you where you recognize that you don't want to be fatigued, exhausted, burnt out, chasing things that clearly don't bring more fulfillment. There's strength and vulnerability in honoring your emotional states and actually understanding what they are. There's a beautiful inflection point in power regain from actually tuning into your heart. So going down the avenue of finding practices that really support you, having a mindfulness as to what's going on in your heart space, what are your emotional states in the present moment. That reclamation of vulnerability allows you to be deeply fulfilled in life because you're able to tune into all of these small moments of gratitude, appreciation, all of the joy and the light that you might have glazed over in the busyness and then the rush of exerting yourself in a masculine energy way. Feminine energy is also deeply powerful intuitively. So for myself, I mentioned in a previous video that I went through a Kundalini awakening, and that's a little bit more on the extreme end of what feminine energy looks like when you're more deeply embodied. But regardless, there's so much power in feminine energy and healing and unblocking any residue that's within our bodies. If you look at all of these Animals, for instance, they are so good at somatically releasing within their body any kind of aggression trauma. You see, like ducks fighting in a pond, and then the other duck just shakes it off, and then they're moving on with their lives. Unfortunately, humans have this level of consciousness that gets us stuck in anger, aggression, and it stirs in our body and it creates dis-ease, which is disease. It can show up as really unhealthy manifestations in the future. And so the power of feminine energy is it's a superpower in helping us clear and unblock any stressors, any traumas, any things that are not supporting our energy body so that we can be clearer, purified vessels so that we're moving through the world in a caring and loving way that's quite sincere rather than festering resentment, festering all of this harbored energy of negativity. Going back to the power of it as a superpower, the intuitive side of feminine energy is deeply underrated. I mentioned having psychic awareness. All of us have dormant psychic abilities within us that we could tap into if we actually spent more time not being in survival mode, actually sitting and meditating and tuning into our inner worlds and states and realizing that our sensing being is so much beyond what is explained and shared with us. So I'm not going to define specifically in this video what all of the psychic abilities are, but you can look into the four clairs and maybe I'll do a future episode on that as a starting point. And there's just so much that if capitalism and the patriarchy encourage people to tune into, then they would be very sovereign, high operating people and not necessarily participating in staying in the hamster wheel and the rat race and the matrix that continues to fund these massive corporations, etc., which I used to work at and technically still do because YouTube is owned by Google. Finally, relating to the power of feminine energy, I want to emphasize the power piece of this in this video because there's so many videos out there that are around feminine energy for dating, how to seem more receptive, seem more playful, seem more something that's performative. And that's not what feminine energy is about. Feminine energy is really about being truthful to who you are, being truthful with what's on your heart, being truthful on what your intuitive guidance is. And then another part of that power is, yes, ultimately being more nurturing to ourselves first and foremost. Actually being able to self-parent incredibly well is game changing. So if you look into internal family systems, there's all these different parts of us, our protective parts. And some of those protective and parental parts of us are so valuable, right? The part of us that's so disciplined, the part of us that really knows how to take care of our mental health, our emotional well-being, our physical health, our spiritual well-being, all of those parts of us are so valuable. It's so powerful because when you feel incredibly healthy, you operate at a higher state of functioning. I don't know if you ever had a day where you're completely sick and laying in bed, you feel like the world is over. That is a very disempowered state of being. And so, yes, being physically vital and operating on all cylinders really powerfully is quite helpful in this world. Now I want to get into the practical steps to embrace your feminine energy. One, daily rituals. Beginning your every single day with a meditation practice, with some movement practice. It could be yoga, it could be dance, it could be some level of stretching, getting into your body. It could be actually just physically working out at a gym, but something that actually forces you to connect with your body's state. So you form more of a mind and body connection early in the day. Spending time journaling, doing morning pages. If you've ever read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, it is my favorite book. It's a staple because it really helps us connect into our sensing self, and beginning each day with practices that connect us with our feminine energy supports us throughout the rest of the day and having more of a spiritually grounded state, emotionally regulated state. Spending time in nature is also hugely helpful if you live close to a park. Just getting outside for a sunshine walk can be game changing. Number two, creative expression. So this series is now called Create to Liberate. I'm so and always have been about creativity as our source of liberation, to feel expansive and express, to feel like we are creating things. We are the creators in the world. We are God, playing that part in our personal lives to allow things to move through us, energy to be in motion. That is what emotion is. But putting it into poetry, writing, journaling, morning pages, as I mentioned, is so valuable. Maybe for you, it's dancing, singing, maybe it's making some collages, maybe it's making a TikTok video. And if you know me from that app, hey. Number three, second to last, surround yourself with community that supports your feminine energy. So having other feminine energies in your life really reminds you, oh, I should be taking care of myself. It is valuable for me to slow down. It is valuable for me to meditate. It is reinforcing for me to have these people around who remind me that are role models and a deep embodiment of feminine energy themselves. We don't know what the ramifications are going to be of this tech boom and how so many people have rewired their brains to be always on receiving notifications, to be working 8+ hours in a day, to actually never quiet their minds because there's always something to be doing, and that's circulating within their subconscious even when they're trying to do the right thing that's present and being in front of their actual life and not letting it slip by their fingers. Surrounding yourself with people who are really good at this, who are maybe better than you, is helpful. It is kind of not surprising to me that I ended up talking about this thing, since a lot of my friends are social workers and very much in their feminine energy, or teachers, or natural nurturers, and I completely rejected that for so long. I'm turning 33 this month. So, this has been a really long journey for me in many ways, given that my natural temperament is deeply embodied in feminine energy too. And then, last but not least, it's really valuable to connect with the goddess, to connect with some level of muse in your life that isn't a physical person, because we're not always going to have our friends nearby. Well, we're not going to be able to look to others, humans. What is helpful is for us to have an image of somebody maybe who you love, goddesses, pick and choose your own, that really deeply embodies, speaks back to you the guidance that you feel you need to receive. So that might be for you also speaking to your highest self, maybe speaking to the divine directly and asking, hey, can you reaffirm me in this life? How can you guide me in moving forward in a way that will create more fulfillment for myself personally and others, that is in support of this planet and the well-being of others? So what are the benefits of embracing your feminine energy? I'll mention 3 things. Increasing your self-awareness is one of the largest ones. There is this space in the world where we do regard feminine energy as something positive when people like the Buddha or Jesus or ascended masters are put on pedestals, and we're looking at them and we're saying, wow, these people, these men were so enlightened. They were deeply embodied in feminine energy. They were able to ascend to levels of consciousness, samadhi consciousness, oneness consciousness, unity consciousness. You define it however you want. Buddha consciousness, Christ consciousness. They were able to ascend to a level of consciousness that not only put them in the position of knowing themselves, but knowing everyone as them. So the more deeply you connect with yourself individually, the more you'll be able to deeply connect with other people. People can only meet you as deeply as you've met yourself. That quote you might have heard, but it's so true. As you excavate and honor more parts of yourself, more of your shadow, more of the parts of yourself that you might have rejected, more of the totality of who you are, the more that you'll be able to recognize that in others and be able to accept that. It doesn't mean that you're in love with somebody who's so jealous and envious and hard to deal with, but you have some acceptance because you know that part of you also exists. I know my villain. Thankfully, I have way better tools these days that I don't really feel much of that stirring. And when I do, I can scream into a pillow. I can find habits and channels of expression of that energy that is more volatile so that I don't project it onto people. So, beyond self awareness, we already touched on this, but number 2 is the depth of your relationships. So many people are going out and seeking romantic relationships, particularly that they think will bring love into their lives. And you have an endless source of love within you. Your highest self is working to give you access to the love that you've been seeking in other people, in all these external places of power. On the other side of that is a deep yearning for true love, connection, intimacy that you will be able to cultivate within yourself. And then you'll be able to experience it more with people in your life, with the present moment, from source directly, from the divine. An analogy is you could have a box of chocolates and eat all those chocolates and be like, yum, what's next? Or you could have one piece of chocolate, and this could be your lifetime, and you're savoring the sweetness and the deliciousness, and you're in a state of bliss and high for an elongated period of time because of the deep level of presence and gratitude. So that's kind of what being in connection with people starts to become, something more precious to you, because you're filling that hungry ghost that's give me love, give me attention. Da, da, da. You've filled your cup up. So additional relationships are very additive to your life. Last but not least, embracing your feminine energy allows you a deep sense of purpose and fulfillment. So as people begin to honor their feminine energy, then they honor their inner child, that part of them that they had deemed as, you're not going to serve me in the long term, imagination, creativity, intuition. I need to focus on this other stuff. But in coming back to that, oftentimes people are honoring their inner child finally. You're honoring your expression, you're honoring often your dharma. It's very likely that you found this because your purpose is also to create something to liberate others, to not only feel your own expansiveness, expression, creativity, intuition, but also empower other people in this lifetime in a way that's aligned with your values in your own unique way. And finally, I want to talk about living a more fulfilling life. So, feminine energy is not only for your personal relationships in life and in the private, it's also for your career. It supports you in being a compassionate leader, it supports you in being deeply intuitive and being able to read people pretty quickly and gauge what their needs are. It supports you in being really grounded in yourself, anchored in yourself, self aware. And so, all of the difficulties that life throws at you, and inevitably does, life is going to serve us many hardships, all of us, that are difficult. And having a level of grounding and anchoring within yourself makes those hard times so much more easeful. Having a life that is more nourishing, more aligned, brings you more a feeling of aliveness, vitality. You wake up in the morning wanting to exist here, not dreading going to work, not dreading engaging with people in your life. You feel excitement around it. So, actually, how can you be in more alignment? Feminine energy will show you what traumas, what shadows, what pain you might have been suppressing that needs your attention so that you can be more healed and harmonious, so that you can attract relationships that are actually compatible with you in the long term. I believe that a fulfilling life is a creative life, is an expressed life, is an intuitive life. It's not the life that I initially signed up for, which was like, I want from point A to point B, $1 million here, let's put in this. And it was very planned and organized. And what that trajectory would have been is a boring, dull, numb feeling life and existence. What I actually and my soul deeply yearned for, and likely what your soul yearned for if you got to this point in this discussion, is fulfillment, aliveness, deeper love, deeper feeling of this life experience, because that's what we're here for. Your life is going to be so interesting, and it's ultimately meant to be. You're not meant to play a side character in your life. You're not meant to play the sidekick. You're meant to be the main character. You are actually on the hero or heroine or person's journey that ultimately starts to embrace all of the parts of yourself. That is the most expanded and expressed version of self through the honoring and in the embracing of feminine energy in our life. You look at caterpillars that evolve into butterflies, you look at tadpoles that become frogs. All of us have the ability to go through levels of transformation within the same body. And people don't want to tell you this. They want to label you and keep you in the same box. So it's for you to actually start beginning challenging your perception of yourself, stretching yourself by doing meditations that are a bit longer, by spending more time in contemplation, doing more self reflection, and expanding at my highest version of self. Who am I? Who am I? And continuing going down that avenue, I promise you, will bring you a deep level of richness. So, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. I wanted to double down on the importance of feminine energy because a lot of my content has been around creative wellness, and people are like, what is that? And as I take a step back, I recognize that the lingo has kind of evolved, and we're talking about feminine energy. We are. We're talking about feminine power. We're talking about the internal state of being more mindful, being more compassionate, tuning into our heart's wisdom more actively, being more expressive. All of those things fall under the house of creative wellness in my mind, but feminine energy, feminine power, we're here for it. And I hope that this supports you in continually embracing yours. If you like this video, hit the like button on YouTube, subscribe to this channel if you're watching there. And for those who are tuning in audio, I deeply appreciate you and your review. Sending you so much love.